Every year in the UK there is a show entitled the Photography Show. It's at the NEC in Birmingham. It's a show I've been to many times, and I use the show predominantly to look at and explore product choices, tripods, filters, you name it. Even rechargeable batteries one year I used the show to investigate. But on this particular occasion I used the show to go and investigate cameras. And what I decided to do was to go and investigate every single camera manufacturer that I could find, and just go and have a look at their latest offerings. And of course you can pick them up, you can play with them, you can do stuff with them. And the one stand that just drew my interest and engaged with me was the Olympus stand. Now, I've long learned that if you go to any camera manufacturer and you ask their salespeople about the kit, then they're going to tell you that it's the best at this, that and the other. I get that. But I still believe that if you ask some very pointed questions, you can still learn something honest about the product, which is very important before you decide to make a choice. So the choice that I made was Olympus. It just felt right in the hand. The buttons and so on and so forth were all in the right place for me. It had functions and features that I liked, and the decision was I would buy into the brand. I took a mid-choice decision, so I bought a middle-of-the-range camera, which was an EM5, and then I bought a mid-range lens, which was their 12 to 50 kit lens. Round about 600 quid's worth of investment, but what I did was I sold some of the large Formula 1 lenses that I had at the time that I was no longer using, and that helped to fund it. So let me go through 3 things that enticed me to buy into the Olympus brand. Thing number 1, price. To change my Canon body, so if I was changing from, I had a 5D Mark 1 to upgrade to a 5D Mark 2, I was looking at spending the thick end of 1,500 quid. Yeah, all right, I already had the lenses, but the lenses that I had, they were quite old. They were more geared towards long zoom ranges, so 400mm, 500mm, etc, which is what you needed for Formula 1 motorsport. They weren't really landscape photography lenses, so I was going to need to change my lenses at some point anyway. I've also already mentioned I bought a mid-range body, which was an EM5, which was weather sealed, which for landscape photography is an absolute must. And then I bought a kit lens, which was their 12 to 50 kit lens. It's kind of not kit, but it's not pro. I didn't want to say that. It was middle of the road, weather sealed. It had a macro function, and it enabled me to have a go with their kit. All told, I spent about £600. I cleaned all of my Canon gear up, put it all back in its boxes, and then I put it in the back of the wardrobe. And I went out into the landscape for 8 months just using a mid-range body and a lens. This is an EM5 Mark II, so this is the upgrade to the one that I bought, and this is a little kit lens. This is a 40 to 150 kit lens. Absolutely tiny, weighs next to nothing, and that's what I survived with for 8 months. After 8 months, I had almost forgotten that I had all this Canon gear in the wardrobe, in boxes, but my decision was made. I could do everything with this Olympus camera and more than I could do with the Canon. Decision made. Price. If you are enjoying this video and would like to support my channel, then please click on the thumbs up icon indicated here. To be notified when I upload new content, which will be every 2 weeks, then please consider subscribing. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. As well as subscribing, click on the bell icon and select all in order to get these notifications. All updates for new videos appear here on the top right hand side of your YouTube homepage. Unfortunately, I don't have a Canon DSLR body to share with you. So you're kind of going to have to take my word for it. The Olympus cameras are tiny. As I've already said, this is the EM5 Mark II. There's nothing to it. It is absolutely minuscule. The DSLR body would be way bigger than what you've got here. That also translates to weight. It's a lot of stuff to carry around if you're going up a mountain or up a fell, or spending a couple of hours wandering a beach of an afternoon. So size and therefore weight was a huge factor. Kit lenses, so this is the 14 to 150 kit lens. It's nothing, absolutely nothing, but it's still a quality optic. So I went from a DSLR with, I think I had 2, maybe even 3 lenses in my camera bag, to 1 camera body and 1 lens. My camera bag felt empty. All of a sudden I could fit my sandwiches, and I could fit a drink and all sorts in my bag, rather than be weighed down with all of this gear. And there was no loss of quality. I want to get that absolutely right. The largest I would ever print would be A4, maybe A3, and certainly the Canon 5D Mark II, Mark I, which was a 12 megapixel camera, was more than sufficient for that. This EM5 Mark II is 20 megapixels. I can print up to A2 with this, and you really don't know. Honestly, you just don't know the difference between the two. Yes, I'm sacrificing dynamic range, but what I'm gaining just makes it worth it. Just as a point of reference, I do actually have the Olympus Pro Bodies as well. This is the EM1 Mark III, and then this is the EM5, and you can quite clearly see there is a massive difference between the two. The reason why I've gone for the Pro Bodies is the fact that they are really weather sealed, and therefore no matter what happens in the landscape, I know that I'm covered. So I started with a mid-range body, as I say, just to dip a toe in the water, but I have actually gone full hog. So size and weight, that would be my next factor. The next and final reason is features. So at the time, a full electronic viewfinder was quite new. Having flip screens was also quite new. We kind of take it for granted now, and an awful lot of cameras out there have got them. But at the time, the Olympus had a flip screen. It actually flipped that way, and then it also flipped out, so you could either have the camera quite low or have the camera quite high. Also, on the back of the camera, you had an awful lot of information. I'm trying to see if you can see that. So I had things like a live histogram, something that was telling me there and then what was the range of exposure or range of brightness across my scene, rather than what I was used to, which was take the image, then replay it, and then look at the histogram. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the ability to be able to make key exposure choices there and then behind the camera and see the result was just completely liberating. These cameras also come with inbuilt art filters, things like pop art, pinhole, black and white grainy film, all sorts of weird and wonderful options. But they were weird and wonderful options that I could see that I could use out in the landscape to make my images just a little bit more different, a little bit more creative. Yes, that effect was only applied to the JPEG, it wasn't applied to the RAW, but it didn't matter. It gave me the opportunity to experiment and to play there and then with the camera in my hand, and that was hugely exciting. I don't use the art filters very often, but when I do use them, I get a real kick out of using them, and it's just absolutely a fabulous feature to have. And I'm not sure that there are any other camera manufacturers that have these software art filters built into their cameras, but for me, a huge plus. Also, in terms of features and functions, was inbuilt camera stabilization. Very, very new for me. I had a couple of lenses that had stabilization built in, but to have it full time in the body again was liberating, because it didn't matter what lens I bought. I knew if I was going to be handheld, then I could use some form of stabilization, and that would increase my chances to get a reasonable image, a reasonably sharp image, no matter what the circumstances and no matter what the subject. I'm trying to think of other functions and features. Inbuilt level meter. I used to have a hot shoe spirit level to make sure that my horizons were straight. Again, there was nothing wrong with doing it, but all of a sudden I don't need that little a £5 lump of plastic with a little bubble in it, and it was a £5 lump of plastic that was forever falling off, and I was forever losing them. And I used to have two in my bag, one in my pocket. I think I had one back in the car, because I just used to lose the damn things. And because they were green, and you were out in the landscape, and if you were in grass and it was green, you were done for. There was absolutely no way you could find the darn thing. So these cameras were packed with functions and features that for me weren't a gimmick. They were things that I could actually use out in the landscape, and they benefited my photography. They allowed my photography to expand. And that's the key reason, or one of the real key reasons as to why I went with this brand, and why I've stuck with this brand as well. Now, I know that the Olympus imaging division has been sold. It's been sold to a private investment firm in Japan. However, that investment firm has a very good reputation of developing products with a future, and I'm keeping everything crossed that JIP do continue to develop the Olympus products. We shall have to wait and see. I hope this has been useful. It's certainly been useful for me, because then if anybody wants to know why do I decide to shoot with Olympus cameras, then I've set down digitally the 3 key reasons as to why. Until the next one, thank you very much for watching. Keep exploring your photography, and do stay safe. See you again soon. Take care.